The first week of winter has already been insane, with multiple huge snowstorms dropping feet of snow across the northern United States. But what if I told you this winter is about to get even more crazy, as the polar vortex will continue to reach further and further south, bringing far more snow to way more people. In this winter forecast, we are going to break down exactly how cold it is going to get over the next few weeks, how much snow you will see, where ice storms are most likely to occur, and where severe weather will explode. The real driver of our winter weather over the next few weeks is something called the polar vortex. The polar vortex is essentially a circulation of freezing air high above the Arctic in the stratosphere. When it's strong, it keeps that cold locked near the pole. When it weakens or splits, it releases chunks of that air southward into the United States. These breakdowns are often triggered by sudden stratospheric warming events, where the upper atmosphere heats up rapidly and throws the vortex off balance. When that happens, Arctic air spills south, which sometimes happens for weeks at a time. Early indications are pointing towards multiple polar vortex disruptions this winter. This is because we have a rapidly expanding snowpack across Siberia and weakening zonal winds, which both suggest a polar vortex that won't hold steady. In fact, the first snowstorm that we saw this year was because of one of these stratospheric warming events, and that's exactly what we expect to continue to happen. Changes in our polar vortex affect every part of our winter pattern, including our temperatures. And right now, long-range guidance is indicating a long stretch of below-average temperatures across the northern plains, the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. That's the region most exposed when Arctic air plunges south through central Canada, and several model outlooks highlight this exact corridor for deep cold outbreaks throughout December and January. Farther west in the Rockies and the Pacific Northwest, it will not be as consistently frigid. However, we are going to have Pacific energy clashing with Arctic air. That means periods of intense cold, especially in higher elevations, are expected. But this also opens a doorway to big snow events when that cold meets Pacific moisture. Across the Northeast, this winter pattern will be a double-edged sword. If the jet stream buckles a bit farther east throughout winter, cold air will lock in and nor'easters will feed off of the temperature gradient, and that's a recipe for multiple high-impact winter storms. But if cold air dumps more into the central United States, the Northeast could end up colder than average, but not nearly as severe when it comes to winter storms. The southern United States is truly a wild card. A weaker polar vortex can occasionally push stronger cold fronts all the way to the Gulf Coast. Even the deep south has a higher than normal chance for short but sharp freezes, the kind that bring rare ice and snow threats, especially if moisture sneaks in at the wrong time. And the west coast is going to ride on big atmospheric river events this winter, but those could be hindered by our La Niña weather pattern that's developing. In the winter, the west coast typically deals with major storm systems, but with La Niña returning, we may see fewer of those storm systems, which means we will likely see above average temperatures for most of the west coast this winter. To put this all together, the northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes are most likely to face the most persistent below average temperatures. The Northeast has a strong cold signal as well, and just the right storm track could mean major winter storms this winter. Farther south, cold snaps may be shorter but more intense than normal, even reaching the Gulf Coast at times. And for the west coast, the pattern doesn't lock in the cold nearly as often, but when it does, big snow opportunities open up in the higher elevations. Temperatures are not the biggest thing that'll be impacted by the polar vortex, as the last few weeks have teased. In fact, we are going to see some major differences in precipitation as well. With this kind of pattern, snowfall is going to be heavily tied to where Arctic air meets these incoming storm systems. Across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes, the storm track looks favorable for frequent clipper systems, lake effect snow events, and the occasional major winter storm. That combination puts this region at the highest risk for above average snowfall, especially around the Great Lakes where cold air is flowing over warm water. Farther west in the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada, and the Pacific Northwest, snow becomes a much larger hit or miss. When Pacific storms collide with entrenched Arctic air, huge mountain snow totals are on the table. Think multiple feet in the Rockies and Cascades during the biggest events. But even in between those major winter storms, we can see long periods without snowfall. The Northeast stands to benefit from the strongest storms this season. The snow ceiling is very high if the storm track cooperates, but being just a few hundred miles off could leave parts of the region with rain instead. It is truly a big boom or bust setup. For the southern United States, snowfall chances increase significantly when Arctic air dives south. We're not talking about feet of snow in these areas, but these are the events that can paralyze travel with just a trace to a couple of inches of fresh snow. Areas like North Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even the Gulf Coast states may see a couple of surprise winter weather events this winter. To put this all together, the northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes stand the best chance at above average snowfall. The Northeast has the potential for high impact nor'easters and major snow events. Farther south, snowfall is rare, but Arctic intrusions could lead to a couple of brief but disruptive winter threats. And for the West Coast, the biggest snow gains are likely in the mountains, especially where cold air forces Pacific storms farther south. Altogether, this winter looks not just colder for many, but will also be way more snow productive than previous years. Snow is not the only concern this winter. In fact, ice storms can be a major problem, and in some years, they end up being the most damaging part of the season. When cold Arctic air settles in at the surface, but warmer air rides in just above it, precipitation melts into rain, and then it freezes on contact. That's when we get something called freezing rain, and this can accumulate on almost anything, including roadways, trees, power lines, and a lot of other things. The weather pattern that we're watching for this winter promotes multiple surges of cold air across the central and eastern United States. And this raises the risk for those major transition zones where warm and cold air fight it out. Areas from the southern plains through the Ohio Valley and into the mid-Atlantic are especially prone to that setup. And in some areas, even a 1/100th of an inch of ice can cause dangerous travel. And then once we get to a 1/2 of an inch of ice, that can cause widespread power outages. Ice storms are unpredictable, and even a 1 to 2 degree temperature difference can determine whether a storm brings a winter wonderland or a crippling glaze of ice. And this winter, the atmosphere looks primed for several of those close call scenarios. And with all this cold air in place, we cannot forget about the other side of weather, which is severe weather. When you have Arctic air diving south and warm Gulf moisture pushing north, that creates a powerful clash zone. And during the heart of winter, that boundary sets up from the southern plains into the lower Mississippi Valley and through the mid-Atlantic. That means we could see strong thunderstorms, damaging winds, and even tornadoes. Winter severe weather events are often fast-moving nighttime threats, and they can be even harder to forecast a few days out compared to springtime severe weather events. So while many parts of the country are dealing with snow and ice, farther south we still need to be on alert for spring-like thunderstorms during the dead of winter. So to put everything together, this winter looks active and unpredictable. We are going to have a bunch of winter storms throughout winter, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified with our latest videos and live streams. We will likely have upwards of a dozen winter storm live streams this winter because of how active it is going to be across the United States, and you cannot rule out 1 or 2 sneaky severe weather events happening as well that can lead to tornado outbreaks. Thank you all so much for watching today's winter forecast. This is the finale of our winter forecast series this winter. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you all again in the next video or live stream.